Okay, Inspector calls in 5 minutes. We're on to Act 2 now, which of course carries straight on from Act 1 in exactly the same situation with the Inspector coming back in. These first few pages are very much about Gerald trying to get rid of Sheila, get her out of the room so she doesn't have to hear what he's got to say. He makes all kinds of excuses. She's had a long, exciting and tiring day. What's important, I think, is that Gerald talks for her. That's how a male expects to deal with a female situation, to make excuses for her. Sheila, of course, makes her own decisions instead. And we get this thing about it's bound to be unpleasant, disturbing. Inspector says, you think they ought to be protected against that? If possible, yes. Well, we know one young woman who wasn't. I suppose I asked for that. Be careful you don't ask for any more. Really, though, what we're seeing there is the idea that Gerald is still trying to get rid of her and still being kind of patriarchal in certain ways, you know, like the big daddy in protecting her. It carries on, and what we see both of them described as speaking to each other bitterly. Gerald is bitter that Sheila, he feels, wants to watch him go through it. Sheila is bitter that Gerald actually thinks she's like that. Okay? That she's a selfish, vindictive creature, as it said. Okay? She's trying to point out the reality to him and she's trying to find her way. It's the wrong time not to believe me. Okay? It's interesting that Gerald makes a better apology here. I always get the feeling that Gerald is actually trying to, you know, well, maybe not do the right thing, but certainly trying to do what he feels he should at this point. But anyway, once again, the inspector goes off on one about this girl dying in misery and agony, hating life. The emotive thing comes in again, as always. And we get this thing about her feeling responsible, and if she leaves her, she'll be alone with her responsibility. And that's a key thing for the inspector. Obviously, responsibility is a key idea in the play, the sense that we've got to share responsibility. As he says, if there's nothing else, we have to share our guilt. A kind of a key message, almost one of those moments when Priestley is essentially turning around and talking to us and telling us we have to share our guilt for what's happened, maybe thinking of the wars. Now, it's at this point, just we got to this strange idea. Mrs Birling, who hasn't been on stage since early in the play, comes back in briskly and self-confidently, quite out of key with the little scene that just passed. That phrase, out of key, very important. Think of the musical analogy. They're playing in one key, she comes in a completely different key. That's Mrs Birling down to a T. She doesn't or can't read situations. She just blatantly comes in the way she wishes. Once again, it's kind of this idea of a fake politeness, which shows you something about her class and the way they behave. Sheila immediately sees the problem, tries to stop her. Worth noting that Mrs Birling affects great surprise, which means she's putting it on. She's not surprised, but she's putting on a performance, essentially. Okay. Mrs Birling carries on about we've made a great impression as a child. He points out we do on the young ones, which again is quite interesting, the generational thing that is going to come up later. Mrs Birling tries to send Sheila to bed. Sheila refuses. Interestingly, one of my favourite bits here, I'm staying here. It's nothing but morbid curiosity, says Mrs Birling. No, it isn't, says Sheila. Fair enough. It's Sheila's own thoughts. But Mrs Birling says, please don't contradict me like that. Don't contradict me about your mind and motivations. I'm right when I tell you about the way you're feeling. I don't suppose for a moment you can understand what a girl committed suicide. Girls of that class. Another favourite quotation, but remember where it comes. This is not under pressure. This is her initial prejudices at this point. They're very different to us. We get this bit about building up a wall that the inspector will then just break down, this image for what's going on. Mrs Birling doesn't understand and calls the inspector impertinent. a key word for Mrs Birling that will come back again and again. In this case, Sheila just laughs at the word impertinent, although, to be honest, she used it, if you look back, in the last act. Maybe suggesting how she's changed a little bit here. Okay, trifling impertinent. And Sheila tries to warn Mrs Birling. Unfortunately, Mrs Birling, straight away, just the same as Mr Birling, again tries to use her position of power to intimidate the inspector and suggest it should be treated differently. Even Gerald sees that's a problem. Okay. We bring up Eric and the drinking. Mrs Birling doesn't think he drinks. He's only a boy. Again, the way she sees her son. It's always very important to notice that Mrs Birling has a little mother-son thing, for Eric, quite clearly. Is very protective of him. But she's so naive, she doesn't know. Okay? Mrs Birling is genuinely staggered to find out that he has been drinking. And then, just as importantly, and probably one of the most important quotations in some ways from her at this point, is where she appeals to Gerald as a man. Her own daughter's told her that she knows her brother is a drinker. She won't believe it, so she needs confirmation from a man. And Birling comes back in.